Greetings and welcome to Phantom's Edge. This will be chapter 19 of this reading. Docking in Amadek, Kaio and his pirate crew were immediately boarded by several heavily armed Mustel military soldiers. They went to search for anything that might signal the pirates as being in league with the bureaucracy of Filey, while the crew was forced to their knees and made to place their hands on the backs of their heads. There, they were searched to be stripped of their weapons. Amazingly, Thomas was passed out, somehow unseen as he hid under the covers while sulking still over his mother. After detaining the pirates, one of the Mustels of corporal rank came over to his superior and said, "Ship's clear, Sarge. They are pirates." "Good," the sergeant of the army responded. "At least for now." He then turned to the ship's crew and asked, "Who amongst you is the captain of this pathetic vessel?" "Pathetic?" Brunhilde barked. First Class Private turned to the felina and struck her in the face with the butt of his rifle, while he yelled, "Silence, pussy! Mein Führer will cut out your tongue if lashed like that again." The sergeant of the army glanced around once at the pirates, then asked, "Who is the captain?" Funny enough, though everyone pointed to Kaio, the Kanai pointed to both Gregory and Perry at the same time. The man went to cross his right arm in front towards Perry to his left, while his left arm aimed towards Gregory to his right. The sergeant turned his eyes to the Kanai and asked, "Are you stupid, dog?" "No, sir," Kaio replied, lowering his arms. "I'm actually quite clever." "How was that anything close to clever?" "Because, while you were barking at me and my crew, my son just slipped by." The sergeant went to glance back over his left shoulder, which Kaio went to grab the soldier's gun as he yelled, "Aha!" However, the Kanai couldn't even touch the handle before the Mustel backhanded the pirate with a rock-hard fist to the right side of the pirate's face. Kaio immediately fell and was pushed aside slightly, while the sergeant lowered his arm. Turning to the pirate he struck, the soldier said, "You drive mine patience, dog." Kaio sat up as he braced his left arm back and put his right hand over where he was struck, while he whined, "Ow, that hurts." The Mustel had a few of his privateers hold up the pirate, then said, "Quit your bitching, Captain, and listen to this. Mein Führer wishes to speak with you personally before we allow you into the city, so you better behave like a good little mutt that you are." Just then, footsteps of heavy boots were heard, and the sergeant quickly moved to face the person with his feet closed. He raised his left fist to hit his chest as a salute, while he said, "Mein Führer, it is him, as requested." Everyone looked over to see a grizzled Mustel, with demonic, dilated purple eyes that brought fear into one's heart when gazed upon them. He was almost 7 feet tall and had a battle scar along his left eye, yet the wound did not rob him of sight through that eyeball. The Führer walked over to stand about 2 feet away from Kaio, then glanced at his followers and asked, "What do you idiots think you're doing to our honored guest?" The privateers immediately released their hold on the Kanai, saluted their superior, then stepped away to let him and the pirate be. Hecklin turned to the pirate and said, "So, demon, you finally meet." "That we do," Kaio happily said. "And also, I'd like my soul back, if you would please." The sergeant turned to the Kanai and yelled, "Stay your tongue in mein Führer's presence, mongrel." Yet with that, the Führer quickly slapped his subordinate in the face with his left hand to silence the Mustel, then began chuckling. After a few seconds, Hecklin said, "That's a new run I haven't heard before. I would say that you are clever, demon. Clever enough to fool Pri." He then looked over at the sergeant and said, "Give these men back their equipment." "Yes, mein Führer." Hecklin moved his right arm around Kaio's shoulders, placing his hand on the Kanai's upper right arm, while motioning the two to walk side by side as he said, "Come, demon. Let us talk as we head to mein villa, where something special awaits you." "I do hope it's rum," the pirate said. Pirates were given back their weapons as they went to follow Kaio and Hecklin, but were forced to keep a 10-foot distance as they were escorted by the Führer's generals and colonels. Kaio and Hecklin spoke about nothing of interest, only of food and drinks. Then as they neared the villa, the Mustel started slowing his pace. Kaio noticed this and was trying to stay with the man, but the Fuhrer only pressured the Kanai to continue ahead. Once at the double doors, Hecklin stopped and waited for the pirate to venture onward. Kaio glanced back, only to find the Fuhrer waving him on to enter the villa. The pirate turned to the doors, shrugged his shoulders, then happily motioned to enter. However, before he could touch the handles, the doors swung wide open as another came to welcome the Kanai. Arms open wide, Alapor called out, "Greetings, my good friend." Almost having a heart attack, Kaio took a step back and yelled, "Holy balls!" Emperor Fardagrass swung his arms to bear hug the Kanai before him, lifting the pirate off the ground a foot high as he said, "I'm so glad you could make it, my friend. It is a joy. Of course, I had no doubt that you would." Hecklin went to pass the two warriors by as he headed inside the villa, while he said, "Let's go, Yutur. We must discuss matters of another nature right now." Still holding on to Kaio tight, Fardagrass glanced back at the Fuhrer and said, "Sure thing, Fuhrer." The Lapor released the pirate to just let him drop, turning to follow them astell. Kaio coughed a few times, then stood up as he too went into the villa. The others soon followed, with the doors closing once everyone was within, including both of Fardagrass's and Hecklin's soldiers. In the large hall, surrounding a round metal table, the three high leaders and their followers behind them ready to overthrow the bureaucracy of Filey. They had a map laid out, with Amadak to one side and Filey to the other. The ranks of soldiers went from the greatest near the table to the least in the back, yet everyone could see and hear everything going on clearly. In a triangular stance of each other, Kaio, Fardagrass, and Hecklin were at the table discussing the layout. Fardagrass looked over at the Fuhrer and said, "My brother Pri is most likely assembling his troops by the time we speak amongst this meeting." "Probably," Kaio responded. "However, by Jacqueline's deceit and estimated time of when she left her old crew, there's no way he'll do anything until the busted Patronage 3 arrives, signaling we're at war against him 2 days hence." Fardagrass glanced at the pirate and said, "That means he'll set his ships sailing for week's end, so we should make this quick." Hecklin slammed his right fist onto the table and yelled, "We must act now! Launch a full-scale assault against the bureaucracy with everything we've got! My soldiers will crush their puny fleet and demolish their world into ashes!" Fardagrass turned to the Fuhrer and barked, "Your warriors may be many with great firepower, Hecklin, but you lack strategic skills and true warrior strength." "My warrior strength is blood-bound and cannot be stopped, growing stronger with every passing second." Fardagrass raised his voice as he continued his argument and yelled, "Ignorant weasel! You'll die fighting the bureaucracy without any sort of plan. No amount of strength is enough against them. Get that through your incomprehensible brain." Hecklin slammed his fist onto the table again as he raised his voice and shouted, "How dare you speak ill of my intelligent head!" Kaio struck the table with both of his palms and yelled, "Silence, both of you!" He then glanced between the two as they angrily stared each other down, while he said, "That is why we are here. We need to form an alliance against the Bureau and stop them together. Besides, you're making me want to pee." Brunhilde slapped the duelite demon upside the head as the other two leaders calmed down, still gazing at one another. His anger settled a bit. Fardagrass said, "He's right, Hecklin. You have a grand army, but without a strategy and immense strength, you're nothing to the bureaucracy, especially on water." Kaio stood up as he looked over at the Fuhrer and said, "Exactly. They base their fighting style at sea rather than land. And trying to get to their land is next to impossible without proper clearance, not to mention they can well outmatch any soldiers you may have. Pirates only get around because we disguise our ships to look like trade vessels, yet dare not fight against the Bureau head-on. Only in self-defense and in areas we know we can corner them and best them." Hecklin glanced down, feeling ashamed for himself, then looked at the Emperor and said, "Fine, but I will not tolerate deceitful ways of battle. My men show pride, and we will deliver it with force against our enemies as we are." "Exactly why we're here." Kaio looked over at the Emperor and continued, "I knew Fuhrer Hecklin would not go with a plan that involved sneaking around the enemy. So that is why you're here, Emperor." Fardagrass looked over at the pirate and said, Indeed, my men can break down any force against them, be it land or sea, but they are only so few. Even with the best of plans, an assault on Filey would be a massacre on our part. And that is why I'm here, to give you that plan for both you and the Fuhrer, so that you cannot lose. Hecklin glanced at the pirate and barked, "And what if it does, dog?" Kyle smirked as he looked over at the Fuhrer and replied, "Well, you're more than welcome to fight the bureaucracy on your own, knowing you can't best them at sea, but I seriously doubt you'll get anywhere just on your own pride." The Fuhrer once again was ashamed of his words, then turned to listen as Fadagras said, "My warriors are strong, but cannot hold against many for too long. However, we volunteered to take on the first wave of soldiers we are to encounter face to face, either on land or sea. With our might, the bastards won't know what hit them." Hecklin nodded to that, then looked to the pirate and said, "My soldiers will counteract any possible threat that comes way before they reach land, where we shall disperse into several groups to cover Filey and remove all reinforcing bureaucracy soldiers. That should be an easy task, even if they may have well-hidden riflemen." Kyle turned to the Emperor and added, "I shall direct all ships and have each pair themselves against whatever vessel that stands before us with all cannons blazing. Any ships not in use may simply continue their voyage to Filey and dismiss any troops as needed. If necessary, with the remaining crew, the ships can turn their attention back to any Bureau vessel and motion into battle against it. Pirates may not be the strongest, but speed along the waters, sails, and cannons are our greatest of abilities." Fadagras glanced at the pirate and said, "Then with our temporary union between pirates, totalitarians, and my empire." He then turned to the Fuhrer and continued, "I hereby declare our battle against Filey to be the final frontier to end their madness for planetary law. My brother Pri shall once and for all realize that I am right and watch as his country falls. Let us stand as one." The Emperor leaned slightly in to hold out his right hand over the table in the center. Then Kaio did the same, as he said, "As one." The two looked at Hecklin, who was disgusted with thinking he was equal to either the pirates or the Lapor Empire, but gave in after his moment and reached his hand out too. When he did, he said, "As one." He then looked up at the Emperor and continued, "For now." The three moved their hands away, while Fadagras said, "Very well. The AO Union is now at arms." He glanced at the pirate and continued, "We await for your plans, Kaio, and will regroup by tomorrow morning for further details." Kaio looked at the Emperor and said, "Understood." The three bowed, then turned to start assembling their equipment as the captain of the pirates went to figure out how to best the bureaucracy. However, Kaio first wanted to check in with Thomas to make sure the boy was alright. The Kanai found the Rodania leaning on the port side railing, waiting for his crew to return to the ship. Kaio alone stepped aboard the Ecuador and turned to the boy, where he soon found that Thomas just left his presence. The Rodania turned away and entered the captain's quarters, leaving the Kanai behind. Oddly enough, Kaio just smiled and went to grab his whistle, hung around his neck, using it to see if the boy would respond to chasing him. He didn't, of course. Not even so much as a peek past the door. Yet that setback wasn't going to stop Kaio from getting the boy's attention. Pirate motioned over to the door, knocked on it, then entered the room. Found the Rodania lying in bed, his back to any who saw him, while slightly curled into himself as he kept his sights shut from the world. Kaio closed the door behind him, then moved to stand near the boy's bedside and said, "Thomas, I'm really sorry for what happened, but can you at least come to your senses for just this one moment and speak with me?" The boy gave no reaction, yet Kaio continued, "We need you with us, my son. I need you to stop the Bureau from doing such harm to any as they have with you and your mother." The boy still did not react. Then Kaio thought of another thing to say, something he kept secret from all who knew him. "I lost my parents to the bureaucracy, Thomas. I know how you feel." The Rodania's ears twitched. Then Kaio continued, "My mother and father were perfectly healthy. until the Bureau came to ask for a treaty with Houndania's government. But when they declined the offer, a few Bureau soldiers were outraged. They came to a few homes, one being mine, and poisoned the members of the household. Thomas quickly moved to look over at the Kenai, shocked at the story given by his captain. I was not home when this happened. I was picking fruit for my mother's dinner plan for the day. When I came back, Father was throwing everything we had previously gathered outside, shouting, "It's the devil's hand at work." I asked what had happened, with my mother only telling me to leave and never return. As luck would have it, Brunhilde was there and accepted to take me onto her ship, yet waited to sail to see the outcome of my parents' demise. People only believed it was the plague that killed my mother and father, but the Black Cat knew better. It was only later that I knew of what happened, swearing to myself I would never fall before the bureaucracy, nor allow them to bring me fear. Thomas turned to sit facing his captain as he glanced down at the floor, then stood as he began shedding tears. After a few seconds, the boy looked up at Kaio and asked, "How can you show no fear for death, Father? No compassion to those around you?" Kaio chuckled for a moment as he smiled, then replied, "Death is not my enemy, Thomas. It is my friend. Please come to realize that as you walk in my shoes. And as for compassion..." He bent down slightly to look directly into the boy's eyes and continued, "What makes you think you could stand here in my presence?" Thomas glanced down, pondering at that for a moment, then looked back up as Kaio withdrew his smile and said, "If any are ever hurt by the bureaucracy, be it friend or foe, I vow to avenge them with every fiber of my being and tear that government asunder. That is my compassion." He then smiled once more as he stood himself up straight, playfully slapping the boy on the left shoulder with his right hand as he happily said, "Now let's go get some rum and drink till we're drunk and drink again." "But Never you mind." The two motioned out of the chamber, where they encountered the crew setting up the Ecuador for battle. They added several more cannons to each side of the ship, above and below deck, while Kaio and Thomas just went to wander around as they watched the crew at work. However, as they entered the lower region of the ship, a man came to grab the captain's attention. He spoke of how he found this strange box floating along the outside of the ship's hull when they had come to Filey a second time, thinking he remembered it from somewhere. After he scavenged the item, he quickly came to understand what it was and wanted to present it to the Kenai. Yet with all the commotion when attacked by the Patronage 5 and sailing for Amarak, the crew member had both no time and forgot about it until then. The pirate handed out a small box, brown with golden markings around its edges. Shocked at the sight of it, Kaio took hold of the box and opened it, where even with its water damage played the gentle tune it held perfectly. Inside was still the silver necklace, with a 2-inch big onyx stone and a 1/2-inch diamond in the center attached to it. After hearing the tune play once over, the pirate pondered about whether or not to show it to his love or to forget he ever saw it. However, he thought of another means. He took out the jewelry and threw it aside, having it fly out a cannon port and into the ocean to be gone forever. Kaio handed the empty box back and asked for it to be given to Fightergrass, who should make a note to place in it. Once done, it was to be made into a special item of the pirate's creation. He gave his crew members specific instructions on how to alter the box and wanted duplicates for each ship. The dual-edged demon wanted the first and most original jewelry box, with the alterations and the note, to be given to a trade vessel, where a courier was to deliver the item to a very important person, giving no information on who or where it came from. With that, Kaio set forth his plans to end the corrupted government of Filey, the bureaucracy, waiting only a day so that the package would safely make its way home. This concludes the reading of Chapter 19. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, be sure to check out my other 2 novels, Lore of the Endowment and Ryo the Demon Slayer. Link will be in the description below. Other than that, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again next week, reading Chapter 20.